All right. So thank you everybody who is watching this, and it's kind of a little impromptu thing, but we're just gonna do a pre-release guide for the Opus 14 set that's coming right out. Um, there's some standard stuff that I'm just gonna go over right at the beginning, but other than that, I'm just gonna kind of dive into each card, give my thoughts on each one, go over what is going to be what you're going to look for, and other than that, just kind of the standard pre-release stuff. So for some people who are older and newer, something to keep in mind is for pre-release it will be a 40 card deck minimum, and then you usually a good rule to live by is 12 backups. We're going to do 8 summons or monsters that aren't going to do to be able to block, so they can't turn into forwards or anything like that. And then usually you want to do about 20 forwards, so you want about half your deck so you can make sure you can actually get in there and actually win the game. Other than that, uh, a big thing with sometimes with limited decks is you actually do want to go for some kind of strategy. You're going to look for the synergy between cards, and sometimes you may want to make a little bit more of aggressive deck where you just kind of rush down your opponent. Sometimes you may just want to actually build up. So that's an important thing to think about, and that affects how good or bad some of these cards are. But other than that, I'm just going to talk in a base generality. But of course, in a pre-release, you're not going to have a constructed deck, so you're not going to be able to have very definitive archetypes too well. You're kind of left at the whims of what you end up getting. So of course you won't be able to go for the really strong strats. And of course you only can play with other cards within the set. So it's important to keep all of that in mind while I'm reviewing this, and while you're doing your pre-release or your drafts or anything like that in the future for Opus 14. But other than that, I'm just going to go ahead and start kind of getting underway. And so the first card, I'm just going to be going based on uh, the actual official list card set wise. So this is card one. So that we have Amalja, and he's a backup. And actually, my apologies. Another thing that I was going to do is I do have a different rating for backups as forwards. An important thing, backups always will have some kind of value in your limited deck because they're backups. They always tap from, a little bit of crystal points. However, forwards, they win you the game, so they're usually a little bit more important, and their effects kind of play a little different. But backups always have an intrinsic value, so I did go ahead and put them on like a different scale, because worst case scenario, even if your backup does absolutely nothing and it only costs 2, and it has actually no effect, it's still probably playable. So that's probably where I would put something that had actually no effect. It would just be a 2. It doesn't actively harm your deck by being in there, but you can always use it for a backup. And for my ratings for my forwards, obviously you can see you're looking all the way up onto the point where it's going to be a card that's going to win you the game. It does everything, and all the way down to cards that just aren't very good, or cards that you actually don't want in your deck. Okay, and so from there we have Amalja, and he is and oh gosh, I'm gonna. Oh no, notifications will be on like crazy. Hopefully they don't go too crazy. But no, so Amal Jah is a nice solid backup. So an important thing for pre-release for this set is there are 2 job primals in most every element. I believe it actually is every element. I've looked it over a few times. I forget, of course. But being able to have those cards, the more you have those cards, the more you're just gonna want to pack your deck with as many of these guys as you have. So if you have 2 primals at least, you just want to play pretty much all of these guys because they all have very good effects. But this one in particular, he deals an extra 1,000 damage. That's important. Being able to trade off your forwards, trade off any kind of helping out your chip damage, doing anything like that. So Amal Jah, just kind of starting off, he's a pretty great backup, but I think I'll actually, yeah, I think I actually, because there are two primals in every color and you're probably going to end up with 1 to 2, we'll go ahead and just give him a 4, which is probably pretty generous, but we'll just kind of see where this keeps going from here. Another thing to mention just for pre-release is usually you are looking for 2 colors instead of trying to go too terribly deep. Usually, if you do go for a third color, you're splashing. And what I mean by splashing is maybe you only play like 6 to 8 cards of that last color. But sometimes you can even just play EX Burst of that last color. That can work out. And there actually are a few times as well during this opus that I do think going over 40 cards is a good idea. But usually you want to go right at 40 cards to keep your deck as consistent as possible. But there are a few cards that we'll see that, may mill out your deck or cause you to discard cards off the top of your deck too often. So you won't want to just have the smallest deck possible. You may want a little bit bigger, but I'll kind of cover over those when we get to them. So that's Amalja. So Ephrata, obviously removal is very good and limited. This is removal. It also does go get something else. However, this is only 7,000. A lot of things in this set that are above 3 CP are 7,000 or higher. So this is not by itself going to kill. So an important thing to keep in mind. It does go and get copies of itself, so you can use it to trade off your forwards. If you do have some extra ping, obviously in combination with Amalja that we just saw, or any other small ping, this card turns a lot more live. I would, at 1 copy, let's say you only got 1 copy in your pre-release or your draft, I would still play it, but it really gets its value at 2+ copies. But it's not going to, just win you games just because this card's, you've got, 2-3 copies of this card. That's not, that's not going to win you the whole game, but it is a solid gameplay. And the higher the number you get, the better it is, because obviously it's also an EX Burst. And an important thing to also note about this set is there's only 1 summon in every element. So there's not much instant interaction that's going to go on, so having those summons will be really important. So because of that, we're just going to go ahead and give this just a nice solid 6 for an above average. All right, and then we have Alua. Oh, it's actually clipping off the bottom of the card there. Let's see if I can. There we go. So now we can see the power of the card. So this is Alua, 1 CP, very cheap. It's a body. It has haste. Usually in limited, you're going to really highly value just being a very large body. However, also being able to remove a forward when it comes in, because when it attacks, you can dull any number of fire backups. You get to deal some extra damage. So a little bit of a trade-off here is in limited, you're not usually going to build up as many backups. However, if you can build into more of a heavy fire deck, a mono fire deck, which are very unlikely in pre-releases, at least for a mono fire, this card will get very, very powerful. But as is, just by being a hasty body that has the ability to both get bigger and deal some damage, potentially kill something. If you have, let's say, 2-3 backups, this could be a recurring source of a lot of damage. And obviously, as we mentioned with Ephrata, you could just combo with it or Amalja, tap 2 backups down, get 6k in, and then ping for that last bit. Alua will be very strong, but the power of the card actually being a 3k is holding it back a little bit. I do think this card's still pretty much in bomb territory for me, because it is going to be both killing, hasty, and recurring damage. So because of all that, I think I'm going to go ahead and give it an 8. But obviously a few downsides that we did note. Warrior Light, I think this card's pretty run-of-the-mill. So this is just going to buff your standard units. These extra buffs to those standard units can get quite large. Obviously, you can't stack the Warriors of Light, but you can stack the standard units. There are some standard units. The Earth one goes all the way in 9k. The one in Fire is only a base 7k. So usually there's only one job standard unit of every element. So that's an important thing to note when you're trying to build your deck. But for the Warrior of Light, I think he's just going to be pretty run-of-the-mill unless you have a good number of standard units. It's really important to look at how many of those you have. It's going to make this card better or worse, but I would say on average, it's just going to actually be average. So I would just give this card a 5. All right, and then we have, I'm just going to call this guy Leonis. So when he's put from the field into the break zone, you get a standard unit back. As I mentioned, there's only one standard unit forward in each element. However, there are multiple backups that are also standard units. Effectively, this makes this guy a 3 CP 9k, which is strong. As I was mentioning, just being large is really important for pre-releases and limited. Pretty much making your opponent have to respond to your large bodies because you're putting the pressure on them. Oh, Earth and Lightning have 2 standard units. Oh, okay. Well, my apologies, lastly, but yeah. I've looked over the set quite a few times, but I keep forgetting stuff. But yeah, so this guy's pretty solid just by being a very large body, even though he's effectively vanilla text. He is a specific name, so you can't just spam him out, but I would just give him an above average. And I am going to be maybe not like stingy, but make sure I'm trying to use the whole range of the spectrum here, so we don't, so I'm not just throwing bombs on everything or everything in the bad territory. We're gonna try to fill out all the way around. So now we have Ifrit, Lord of the Inferno. This guy's a rare, which is very strong for these primals. So also in conjunction with Amalja, there's a rare, and then there's the legend primals in each element, so that will make these more live because you can get them as just rares. Obviously, your heroes, your legends are going to be more powerful and limited usually, but you won't see them as often. Rare, you can probably guarantee to see one in your pre-release pool, more or less. We'll see how it fully shakes out, but so for Ifrit, he can try to combo kill on 2 different forwards, and then he also makes all of your other summons and abilities a lot more live. So it actually cranks, like when you get Ifrit, it makes your Ifritas more live. So obviously you want to really build on the synergy like I was talking about before, where you just, synergy is going to be how your deck really runs, especially in this set. I think there's a lot of really good synergy rather than just raw cards by themselves. But for Ifrit, he is very, very strong. You can potentially kill off 2 forwards. We're going to go ahead and just give him a nice little bomb status. And he's going to hopefully kill something when he comes out, and hopefully do a lot just by staying out. So that's pretty good. All right. We'll move on to Garland. So Garland, as mentioned, I'm not really going to cover over how these cards are in constructed or standard or whatever you want to call it. I'm mainly just looking at how these cards are in limited and pre-release. And a lot of people will probably be a little disappointed, but I don't think this guy is going to carry too much weight in limited. So the only thing he's really preventing is that extra damage from summons or abilities, which there are some abilities and summons that do damage. However, the main way things are going to die in limited is actually just kind of forcing attacks. And this guy can't really force an attack at 4 CP and 8k. He is the most generic of stats. And because of that, he actually is just going to get a pretty standard rating for me, because not only is he not going to like have an ability that affects the battlefield, he's just completely standard. If you do draw a card due to his ability, he turns a little bit better, but you know, for a 4 CP 8K, it needs to do something to kind of impact the board. So I would actually go ahead and just give this guy a 5. He may draw you a card. When he does, that's going to be good. Other than that, he's not really going to do too much, more than likely. If you happen to get the S, card definitely gets a lot more live. But that's a little unlikely with him being a legend. All right, Caius, 2 CP 5K. So he is an interesting card. I do think this card, he's on stats for his slot. He is an aggressive card, which are usually pretty good in limited because you can be able to pressure your opponent. So it will allow you to kind of trade in some other forwards and then be able to attack with Caius. There's some potential where you set up like a late game strategy where you attack with multiple things and you lose them all just to be able to force a block from Caius, and then maybe something else can get through. But other than that, he's not too exceptional. He's, just pretty much standard. So I'm actually just going to give him a 6, where he's just slightly above average. Just because, once again, we're kind of looking for CP and power efficiency. So his CP power efficiency is on curve for what he's doing, but then he's getting that 3K extra power and Brave, potentially letting him trade in with, like Garland or any kind of standard 4 CP. All right. And then we have Gabranth. So for Gabranth, being able to just be a backup, once again, is good. This ability is very useful, but it's only good at 5 damage. Your opponent can play around that, but once it is live, this card will be pretty useful. He's a specific name, so obviously with any limited deck and specific names, be careful about loading your deck up with too many of them. He is a rare, though, so you won't see too many. But for Gabranth, I would definitely at least want 2 copies in my deck if I did have him. So because of that, I'll go ahead and give him a 3. He's not going to be quite as impactful as a Malja as a backup, where you can just kind of ping off and make a lot of your other cards live. But it is important being able to just kind of save your pivotal bombs or your best cards late game. But once again, only at damage 5, your opponent can play around that, and in limited, we are only playing to 6 damage, so there's not a long period of time where the window for his ability will be live. All right, Guts Go. This is a very interesting card. I think he is definitely going to see some standard play, but besides standard play, this card's great in limited. He's going to be drawing you a lot of cards. Bare minimum, he's always going to replace himself. He's only a 7K. But once this card this card is a good card when you're in advantage, where you're able to push the attacks, where you're able to, pump your guys and kill off their guys and make sure you're constantly attacking. That way, obviously you're going to just keep accruing value. If you can get to that stage, this card's going to kind of steamroll away with the game, but it is only a 7K for 3 CP, so it's not like super above average stats or anything like that. We're just looking at standard stats. I would actually just go ahead and give him, actually I think I'm going to give him, I'll give him an 8, just barely. Like, he's like a 7.9 for me, but we'll just round it up to an 8. Being a smaller body, even though he is more efficient, is still always going to be a problem because he's going to get roadblocked a little easier. But just by being able to get all those cards back to your hand, being able to draw potentially 3-4 cards is really important. Actually, we'll leave it at 8. It's 7.9 still, but all right, Susanoo. So also not mentioning constructed, but this guy's a beast. This guy is 6 CP in haste and kills the board. This will win you games. This will clear off games where you're losing. This will empty a backup that you want to play a second of. This guy attacks, he removes stuff from the game, like he does everything. So as the rating says below, he does everything. Obviously, you're probably not going to see him too much because he is a hero, but holy cow, if you got him, he is probably a card you will try to bend over backwards to play. All right, so not too much else to say about him other than he's great. All right, Cogent. So there's this whole cycle of all of these guys. They're very interesting. As mentioned, you only have a 40 card deck in limited. Peeling through 2 of it just to play this card is okay. Peeling through 4 to play this card and make it CP even and not have a backup in play anymore is not fantastic. The most important thing to point out with this card is you're probably not going to be playing a mono color deck. All of these cards only hit cards of their color. If you miss, you're just paying 4 CP for a very bad backup that milled 2 cards out of your deck. That might later game draw you another card. If your opponent sees you play 2 of these cards, they can, now start looking at opting into the mill strategy. So I would stay away from this guy as absolute much as possible, but technically he is playable. If you do find yourself with him, and you just have to play this color, and you just have to, let's say you have a Susanoo, you have no other backups, you need some red backups, you can play him. I would err on the side of potentially playing an extra card or 2, and I would make sure that you are deep enough in fire that you're going to, at least 50% of the time, 50% of your cards are fire, maybe 35% of your cards are fire. So if it's below that, you're never hitting 4 CP on a backup is pretty rough and limited, especially in this set where everything is quite efficient. So bare minimum, I will say this guy is playable, but overall, I would say try to avoid him. There is an avoid category, but if you need a backup, you need a backup. Actually, you know what? We're just gonna go ahead, just for the sake of people who will just look at the scorecard. I'm just gonna put him in the avoid status. No. We'll give him a 2. Okay, I convinced myself. All right. So Couple Droid Yang. There's a whole cycle of all of these monsters as well. As I was mentioning, you don't want too many monsters that are not forwards, but you kind of just think of them as summons. So this guy's effectively just a delayed summon. I actually think this guy's pretty good. He does take a little bit of time to build up, so you're usually looking at 4 turns to hit 3 to 4 counters on him. So you're hitting 6 to 8k. That's where you're really gonna look. So if you do have these guys, go ahead and play them out early. You just pitch an extra card from your hand, put it out there. You may not have to pop it off right immediately, but it's good to have the threat and have the option as the game goes on. There's not really any monster destruction in this set, so you are pretty safe. You just go ahead, throw it out there, and then stock it up, and then we'll use it on your best target. It is, just in general, it is also a good idea to hold these as late as you really can, or unless you see, your opponent drops out a, Ifrit, or other primal. That's where you want to use this guy. You don't want to try to use him before then. So overall, I think these cards are pretty good. You're only paying 2 CP for a removal. It is delayed, so it's not, if you're top decking at end of the game, it's not going to save you, but overall, I'd say it's a pretty great piece of removal for this one in particular. All right, then we have Samurai. So this guy's pretty standard. He's, got Brave, but you're probably not going to activate any of his abilities. He is probably just going to be a blank 3 CP, 7k Brave. If you happen to have a bunch of samurais, you're probably not going to have them all in play at the same time. But if you have 3 of this guy, you can get there, and they get 9k, or they go to 9k. But other than that, this guy's just going to be very generic. Keep in mind, though, once again, as I mentioned earlier, Warrior of Light with standard units, you're going to get a lot of value there. Just being bigger than your opponent is important. So if you have Warrior Light, and this is in the same color as Warrior Light, so it's really easy to build that in. Just because of Warrior of Light, I'll give him just a above average, I guess. But without Warrior of Light, he would not. He would just be, blank 3k. Actually, he's probably below average without Warrior of Light. But with Warrior of Light, he gets saved a little bit. All right, Xenos. So this card is a little good and a little bit of a trap. Like with Zul'jin or Kojin, the 4 CP backups where you're milling yourself, he mills you for 5. So it is important to note that that's going to mill you for 5. If you're not immediately kind of turning the gas on your opponent, you are going to deck out very quickly, and your opponent will probably try to, angle for that. So it just kind of creates a new window for your opponent to win. Other than that, he can grab you all your primals. He is only grabbing your forwards, which are only the primals in the set. So if you do have a pretty good amount of primals, he's pretty live. But his effect is mandatory, so even if you have no primals and you just have him, I would avoid him. If you have actually no primals in your deck somehow, you are more likely going to have some. They are going to be some of your more powerful cards, but just keep in mind the fact that he is going to mill you 5 cards, and this is another example of where and why you may want to not have a 40 card deck. You may want to go a little bit higher, maybe 40, 42, 43 card deck, just to be able to give yourself a little bit extra space before you mill out when your opponent's also doing the same. So for that, I'm just going to give him I'm actually just going to give him an average rating, even though he's a 9k and a 5 CP. The downside of milling yourself, although it does get you your primals, yeah, we'll give him a 6. Okay, so we'll give Xenos a 6. But that's pretty much everything I can say on that card. So then we have Geomancer. This is a backup. This backup is phenomenal. You want as many of these as you can. It's not like a bomb that's just like going to overtake games, but it will win you games. This is an easy 4 for the Geomancer. He's going to, stop something from blocking plenty of times throughout the game, and then right on the last turn, he's definitely going to get used. Absolutely great card for limited, so you want as many of those as you can. All right, Mom Bomb. So all of these monster cycles are a little interesting because if you don't have enough fire backups or whatever color backups, they don't turn into forwards, and then they're pretty much dead cards, at least for some of them. Mom Bomb in particular. Mom Bomb will probably never go to the break zone, which means it will never do its effect. So you're paying 2 for an 8 for nothing. However, if you do have those fire backups, you're built up enough into fire. This card can be pretty good. Just due to the downside of it not potentially not being live, it's going to hold it back. Obviously, 2 CP for an 8k is insane. An ability that you don't have full control over, but it's still your ability, so you can use it to pressure, or you can attack with this guy and know that he's going to trade, but he'll trade into their 9k, which will then maybe kill off their other 5k or something. Once this guy's live, he's very good, but he's definitely being held back by the fact that he is not always a forward. All right, and then other than that, we have a cycle of chaos cards. So There are the Chaos cards for Opus 9. There are 4 of them, and they all discard an extra card to deal damage, or to do something. This one deals damage. Dealing damage, obviously, in limited, and hitting 8k rather than the Ifrita only hitting 7k. Very relevant. So, and also just being on a body as well is important. So because of that, we're going to go ahead and give this a 7 as well. So it'll be able to kill something. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is it can only discard job chaoses, so it will be dependent on how many other ones of those you have in your deck. However, they are all commons, so you should see a good number. All right, red 13. So this is a backup. I'm gonna go ahead and just give this a 2, and I'll give my reasoning. My reasoning: you're not gonna use this ability. Probably don't ever use this ability unless you get really lucky and you get a Hojo combo or something like that. Most of the time, you are going to want your forward to stick around, and unless the forward you're putting in play has haste or has a really, really good put in play effect, it is just not going to be worthwhile to activate it and effectively throw away a forward out of your hand. Because of that, it's not going to combo that often. You're not going to kind of get there. Your deck's going to be janky. It's pre-release, and or draft. So because of those reasons, it's playable. Just probably avoid the ability. All right, and we're just going to keep moving. So we moved on to Ice. First card is Ysayle. Similar to the last card, where you probably just don't want to use the ability. You probably just don't want to use the ability here. You've already paid 3 CP, and you've had it sit around a turn. There's not really a situation where an ice forward in your hand, other than Shiva, is worth killing a forward over. If you absolutely don't have the CP for it, sure, but 99% of the time I'm gonna say this ability is gonna be a blank. Because of that, we're just looking at 3 CP 7k. I'm gonna go ahead and just give this a below average because it's just a 3 CP 7k. It at least needs to have Brave. It at least needs to have haste. Do something. More times than not, this is just going to do nothing. Also, it's a specific name, and it clashes with the legend of this set. So, all right, so we have Valfredir. This guy's interesting. He's smaller than Mom Bomb, and his ability is worse than Mom Bomb, and he's just as hard to trigger as Mom Bomb. So because of that, I'm actually just going to give this guy a 5. Now, a big thing is I really don't put a lot of stock in this ability in Limited, because you're giving your opponent, rather than just forcing them like on an attack where you're going to trade out forwards, they could not have cards in hand, or even if they are, discard in Limited is very weak unless it's going to kind of clean out their entire hand. They're going to have bad cards in hand because everybody has subpar decks. It's not a constructed deck. Not every card is going to be good. They're going to have something they can throw away. So an untargeted discard like this is not going to do a lot. So for that reason, I'm just going to go ahead and give that guy a 5 and just move on. All right, and then we have Cam. So Cam is really good. Being able to, as I mentioned before with other cards, kind of synergize, do a little bit of damage here and there. But he can actually, if you're built pretty heavy into ice, he can pretty much do it all by himself. Let's say you get 3 ice backups and any other amount of ping, you can then start killing off a dull forward just by playing and attacking with this guy. He's going to carry a little bit of weight. An important thing to keep in mind is he only hits dull unless you get the S ability. So only hitting the dull is a little rough, but that's always Ice's downside. But I do think Ice has some other things that kind of make up for it. But overall, I do think this guy's pretty great. So I'm going to go ahead and just give him uh, a an 8. If you do happen to get the S ability, fantastic. He may even be a little bit better, but it just, without hitting the S ability or hitting it too often, he's still very sizable force to play with. All right, then we have Gilgamesh. This guy has a wall of text, and none of it matters except for the first little bit. If you are playing a 3-color deck, great, play this guy. It's not hard to splash that last color. As I mentioned, you can play EX Burst. You can just, play that third color and it be like 8 cards, 10 cards, something like that. But don't ruin your deck to try to play this card, and definitely don't play 5 colors, don't play 7 colors, just play 3. A really important thing to keep in mind, though, is light and dark will count as a different element. So if you have a light or dark or both forward, then you can play this guy a little bit more regularly, even in a 2-color deck. So if you have, let's say, 2 dark forwards, you may be able to play this guy in just a 2-color deck. I would still look at splashing maybe like 1 EX Burst or something just to try to help trigger his first part of his ability. But this card at 8k, haste and first strike is very good. Without it, he's pretty bad. With those abilities, though, I think those are pretty consistent to get. Haste, first strike, and 8k is very sizable, and people are not going to see that coming out of an ice deck, especially haste. So that's really important. So then you can just kind of swoop in. So for that, I'll give this guy a 7. I think he's pretty great. All right. Bard, put it in the break zone, dull and freeze something. These cards are always good in limited. It's a multi-play, it's 2 CP backup. It can, just like the Geomancer from before, it can help you win the game, except it can also help you not lose the game, which is another benefit all of itself. It does kill itself regardless of, whenever you use it, but I definitely will give this card a 4. These cards are just great and limited. Even though it costs 1 CP to activate that ability, it's still very, very much worthwhile. All right, and Kuja. Everybody's been making fun of this guy for constructed. However, I'm happy that this guy is great for limited. So as mentioned before, large bodies are good. This guy is a large body. He's pretty much the standard large body, 5 CP, 9k. So if he's chosen, you get to dull something. It's going to at least prevent stuff where you're going to lose the game and you have Kuja up for block, or you go to attack phase and they dull out Kuja and you're worried about trading, like I'm going to get 1 damage in here and then 1 damage in there. Now they go to, dull or kill Kuja or something, and you get to dull something. So you may be able to attack with that other forward, or you prevent yourself from losing because Kuja's up to block. You should feel pretty safe if this guy is up. Because of that, just by being a large body, that, once again, helps him a lot, even though he is correctly costed. Just by being a large body, he will get a nice little above average for me. The extra little ability of dulling something as well is great. All right. Kefka. This card's also been made fun of a lot for standard. However, I do think it's pretty playable in limited. You're probably never going to get the active ability. The put and play ability, you're overpaying for it for a little bit. But you do get the turn you put something in play. Usually you do want to rush out your backups, but also being an EX burst kind of helps him out. So he's got some pros, cons. The biggest thing is you're never going to activate that ability 9 times out of 10 in a pre-release or a draft, because you're not going to have 5 backups, let alone be in a mono ice deck. So it does hold him back a lot. But just being able to play him, play a backup, and immediately get a dull out of it, and hopefully be able to attack in with your guys, that's pretty important. I would say this guy's just average, though, so we'll... Oh, 9/9, just a 3. So we'll give him a 3 on playability. Keep in mind, he is... a specific name, though, so that is holding him back as well. You don't want to play too many. You probably just want 1 in your deck. Actually, thinking about it a little more, maybe we actually drop him to 2. Yeah, we'll drop him to 2. Yeah, just the fact that you can't play too many of them is another important thing. All right, Emperor. So as mentioned, there's only 1 summon in each color this set. And the light and dark aren't summons either. So this guy's first ability will pretty much always trigger, effectively making him a 0 CP card. 0 CP for a 5k, I don't see how you don't like that. It's a small body, which I've mentioned before. Small bodies are bad, big bodies are good. Regardless of how much you're paying for him, but 0 CP is really hard to overlook, and because of that, he's definitely pretty great. You're almost never going to get the break zone ability, but if you do, great. If you are getting that break zone ability, you're probably already about to mill yourself, though, so be very careful. So other than that, card's just kind of playable. He is great. A really big caveat, though, like, don't stack your deck with too many of these guys. He is only a 5k. He's not going to win the game by himself, but he can help do party attacks, do pressure. Party attacks are a lot better in limited than they are in constructed. There's going to be a lot less combat tricks and other removal spells kind of going on, so it's important to keep all of that in mind. Just by being able to use him as like essentially a 0 CP party attacker, that's pretty useful. All right, Goblin. This guy is kind of like Kobold Droid, but just worse, because he can only hit dull forwards. I love that they kept the flavor on brand, but it's literally everything I said about Kobold Droid, but just worse. The biggest downside is if they have something that's brave and it just keeps attacking, you're in a really bad spot. It is 1 CP. Overall, I don't see the difference between the 1 CP and 2 CP in limited. As I mentioned, you do want to get these guys out usually pretty early. You can maybe find a spot in your early game where you can drop out the Goblin instead. But the Kobold Droid, you could just pitch a card from hand, get him going on turn 1, and not feel bad about it. On this card, you might feel a little bad about it, but it's not a bad decision to just pitch a card and get this guy rolling turn 1. But for all those reasons, I'm going to give it a 6, so just slightly below the Kobold Droid, but it is cheaper. That's the only upside, but the downside of the effect is quite substantial. All right, this card, Chivalry. I think this card, first off, art is amazing. EX pumps your guys, makes them discard cards. The making them discard card is like very icing on the cake. 2 CP to just pump for 3k is strong. In limited, it can save your guy from your best guy from dying. It can, help win a combat where somebody did some other pump. And then when you do win that combat, you're going to get a discard out of it. Now, you may not always get a discard, and it may not always be a very powerful discard, but I do think just the fact that this is 2 CP, essentially, usually people aren't going to be able to follow up, like, their big hit with more. So if you have an 8 CP forward and they ping it for 1K and then they try to Ifrita it, they're probably out of gas. As long as you are able to hold a Chivalry and an Ice card in hand, that's gonna help you a lot. So then hoping to get the discard out of it, if you can, that's great. Other than that, it's just kind of on par. So I would give this a little bit above average for the discard, but other than that, it is going to be saving your guy. It's a combat trick. Combat tricks are very good and limited. All right, Sarah, 4 CP 8K, pretty standard. Once again, this is a put into the break zone effect, so you don't have control over that, which is very frustrating. It makes those cards a lot worse because you don't get to actively use them. You can kind of trade her in. The most important part of this card, though, is definitely the last ability. Freeze all the forwards your opponents control. This is so strong. Because there's so many different board scenarios where you can pressure with this card. And freezing out, even if you only freeze one forward at the trade of this card, that's a new thing for your opponent to consider. And if this is one of your blockers and you activate it and it freezes everything, that's going to hold at least one forward down, hopefully. And then it's going to make your opponent reconsider whether they want to attack the rest of that turn. So that can buy you a lot of time. It can do a lot of stuff for you. I definitely think this card's quite good, and I'm definitely gonna give it a 7 here. All right, Good King Moogle Mog, or Moggle Mog, I don't know. So this guy's first off adorable, but let me read him again. Oh yes, you get all your Moogles out of your deck. So this guy's like not going to do too much in the set, unfortunately. He's cute. He's a recurring dude, but other than that, he's just kind of not going to be much of a factor. He's probably the worst of all of the primals that you're looking at in this opus. Other than that, he's just a body. So I think because of that, we're gonna have to actually give him a below average. Let's give him a 4. You're not really looking forward to playing this guy. One of the best things that he has going for him is the fact that he says primal, so he is going to trigger your backups that matter about primals. But more or less, even if you build your deck towards the Moogle thing, it's probably not going to work out for you. There are the Moogle backups. You could get multiple copies of this, but it's realistically not going to happen too often. If it does, you may have a deck there, but I wouldn't try to go into it unless it pretty much gets handed to you. All right, Proto-Falsi Adam. First off, I have no idea why they brought everything down over the text. It makes it very hard to read. But other than that, this guy's a rare, and he's quite good. So he's pretty large. Usually your opponent's going to kind of keep a few cards in hand, but especially as the game starts to wrap up, your opponent's going to be using as many cards as their hand as possible to try to make sure that they have board advantage. So if you're in a good spot and they're pitching cards from hand to make sure that they're on top of the board, it's gonna make this guy a 9K with first strike. And we kept talking about like power versus like cost ratio, and like this guy's way up there. So if you're looking at even half the time a 9K 3 CP forward, that's great. Also getting first strike, very good. Then you have his abilities. He negates 2 things that target him. He is like absolutely very powerful. It is important to be able to pressure your opponent's hand with some discard. Unfortunately, as we've kind of gone through most of this already, there's not a ton of discard. so you cannot really control your opponent's hand. If there was more discard in this set, I think this card would probably go to a 9, but without that, it's probably an 8. It's still a very good card. If you have enough discard in your deck, it may even be better. But in limited, he's still very strong. So an 8 rating is still very good. All right, Devout. So this is part of that cycle. I'm going to give it the same rating that I gave Kojin, which is the 2. I'm just going to pretty much give all of these a 2 across the board. Ice probably cares the most about this effect because you have Emperor, I guess. But you really just don't want these effects too heavy in your deck. It's going to make it so people can play towards milling you out. It's just going to make your deck a little less functional. If you have to play 1 or 2, that's fine. But really don't look for them. All right, Time Mage. So this card's worded really weird for anybody who is unfamiliar. This will work if it becomes dulled by anyone else's ability or your own ability, or if you attack with it. From that, you get to dull something. It's 4 CP. You get to dull something. It does turn off essentially your opponent's tap down stuff if they're trying to like tap down your stuff and then win the game. But other than that, it's usually going to be used when it's attacking. Being able to take out any forward, it has no condition, so you can just dull anything. That is a very, very good ability in limited. Because of that, it's definitely going to get a 7 from me. Even though being a 4 CP is and 8k is just completely generic, that ability is going to be very, very powerful and limited, and it will help you kind of push through your opponents. All right, Don Corneo. So this guy, usually, as I mentioned, discard is pretty weak in limited because you're going to make your opponent discard the weakest card in their hand, which in a deck of already weak cards, discarding the weakest card's not that big of a deal. However, Don Corneo, you get to pick 3 and then you take 1. Being able to take potentially their best card in their hand changes things drastically, and this card becomes very, very playable. It's effectively CP efficient because it's a 4 CP, and then you're going to rip 2 CP out of their hand. But the ability to both gain knowledge of looking at your opponent's hand and discarding a card, this card's very, very good. I'll definitely give this a 4. An important thing to remember, though, is it is a specific name. You don't want too many of these in your deck, but the second copy, I'm really happy about. Any copies after that, I would probably stay away from. All right, Shiva, Lady of Frost. So this card is insane for limited. It just, like, if you want a card in limited that like wins you the game, this is it. Susanoo was it in fire. This is it in ice. This card's absolutely insane. An important thing to remember if you play against somebody who gets this card is I'm sorry for your loss. But also keep in mind you can use this active ability even on your opponent's turn. There's no restriction on it. So you can just pop the 3 backups when your opponent's going to attack step. It brings Shiva into play. It brings her undull, right? So she's active, so she can just block. It freezes everything they have. You can choose any character. So you could even choose a backup to, stop some kind of combo or something. This card just kind of does everything. If you're in ice and you get this card, yeah, you're probably going to... Or if you get this card, you probably want to be in ice. It's also a 5 CP 9k, so as we mentioned, large bodies. Really good. All right. So from there, Moogle 14, just like with the King Mog, it's only as good as... Or just like with Amalja. It's only as good as how many primals you get, but this ability is pretty good. It's not quite as good as Amalja's, but it can, kind of like with the Bard, it can prevent you from losing rather than just attacking. Because of that, I'll actually give it a 4 still, because you can use it like on your opponent's attack step. They go to attack, you dull something, and then you get a whole round of attacks in, and all you have to do is leave this up, and you can pretty much hard wall one forward as long as you have a primal out. Once again, getting primals and playing around your primals is probably going to be one of the most important things this set. Alright, and Luge. Oh, so this card's interesting. I think this card's really good and limited. I don't think this card, not mentioning constructed as much, but I do think this card's very good and limited. Being able to make like one of your big guys even bigger and brave. If you put this on 9k, that turns into 11k. That's where you're really gonna see a lot of value. If you put this on like a 7k, just to try to like keep them out, like that's not gonna do too much unless that 7k is Guts Go. But other than that, this card's very good. I definitely think you're gonna want to not use the ability until pretty late or on a 9k body though. Alright, and we'll move on to the next. Okie doke, we got Adele. So she's got haste, 3k power. The extra one where she can't get targeted is not really gonna happen. This is essentially just like an inferior version of Caius, in my opinion. She is a 2 CP 5k. If you do get to 3 win backups, which I would argue is sometimes harder than just having one of your forwards die, this card's pretty good. It is more or less on the same playing field as Caius though, so I'll just give it a 6. But if you're heavier into wind, it gets a little bit better. If you're not, be really careful about playing this card if you don't have a heavy enough wind. Just 2 CP 5k is not really going to do anything. Alright, I have no idea how to pronounce this, so Abquaba. So this guy's pretty interesting. We've had this effect previously in Limited, and they actually were on 4 CP bodies that were 8Ks, and they got plus 2K instead. And they were also generic units, so you could play multiple. So those were all better things for it, because A, it was bigger, and then it was getting bigger, and then it was just better. Because of all of those reasons, this guy's a lot worse. I do think this ability is pretty useful for attacking, but overall, you're not like crazy about playing this guy. He can help you get in like over a 9k on like one turn, but where you play like 3 forwards or 2 forwards to try to trade him in. But keep in mind it also does count backups and monsters. Overall, he's just going to be average. You're not going to be like so upset to play this guy, but don't play too many copies of him. He's not very good defensively. He's not going to take a game and run away with it. He's going to be okay pressure. All right, and Ixali, here's the primal support backup in wind. So this one just untaps one of your forwards. It's all right. It's a lot weaker than the other two. Being able to effectively give something brave or be able to help prevent you from losing against ice a lot of times will be very helpful. But it's not quite as useful as the Moogle or Amalja are in comparison for the primal support backups. I definitely think he's still pretty useful. I'll give him a 3. Once again, you have to have primals to play these cards, but I do think you're going to want to build your deck around where your primals are. So kind of keep that in mind. And speaking of primals, here's Bismarck wins Legend Primal. This guy's great. He's not as good as Shiva. He's not as good as Susanoo for limited. This guy's very, very strong. He will draw you cards. He will help you combo and do a lot of stuff, but he's not going to kind of win the game all on his own. You're going to have to put in a little bit of work, and it may take a few turns. If this guy kind of sits out, he does have that recurring value of being able to bounce, like a backup and draw a card. Just being able to kind of cycle through your deck to be able to find the good cards is really important, but he's not as insane as Shiva or Susanoo. I would say he's about on the same power level as Ifrit, maybe a tad better, so we'll give him a 9. But he's definitely not as good as Shiva or Susanoo. Oh, and one other thing to say about Bismarck, just in case anybody ever forgets. For the dull inactive win forward, you can use that the same turn that you do play things. So let's say you have 3 win forwards out, you could pass turn on the end of your opponent's turn, tap all 3 of your forwards, hit something for 6k. That will be something to kind of keep in mind, that you can just do that at any time with any of your guys, regardless of whether they just came in or not. So that ability is very strong. All right, Cactuar Oni. This card's not what you usually want to play in limited. This is just something. It's not going to do enough for the board in enough situations. It's not a summon that's going to kill something. It's not a forward that's going to block something. Late game, this is going to always just be, at best untap 1 dude, and you're gonna be really sad that you drew this like the final turn of the game where all you can do is untap 1 guy, and if it had been anything else, you would be fine. For that reason, we're gonna play it in the bad category. It's not like oppressively bad, but this is just not what you want in a limited card. It has very little flexibility, and it's not impacting the board enough to cost you a full card. All right, White Mage. This card's kind of a trap. It's a 2 CP backup, so it's fine. But you're almost never going to get that ability, and even if you do, it's probably not going to lead to too much for you. Most of the time, it's just going to be a 2 CP, 1 CP backup, so it's not really going to be too powerful. Howdy there, Onion. Alright, so that's White Mage. Alright, Sin. This card's interesting. 4 CP, 8k, just standard, but we scrolled down. Other than that, being able to cancel auto abilities is actually pretty powerful on a lot of the cards that you're worried about losing the game to. It would require you to have 2 cards in hand. Other than that, it does turn off, action abilities. There aren't too many active abilities in the game. An important thing to also note is that doesn't turn off specials. So people can still special into that. So it's not doing too terribly much. It's more or less just a standard card. Being able to turn off the auto abilities will be helpful. Like, let's say your opponent gets a Susanoo out and is about to, blow up your whole board. That's important. Stopping a Shiva, that's great. A few other things, maybe you want to stop those. Like, you can stop a Camelot from killing one of your guys. More or less, more times than not, you're not really going to care about that effect. For that reason, I'm just going to give this guy a 5. Most of the abilities you really care about are put in play effects, but they're not worth 4 CP to negate unless it's going to absolutely break you, and that's still a full card. So it's or a full 2 cards. So all right, Sniper. When it becomes dull, just like with the Time Mage, that can happen a lot of different ways. Um, if you do happen to have it with Bismarck with Cactuaroni, maybe you start playing the Cactuaroni because you can untap him, and then you can tap him again with the Bismarck. But more or less, I would rather just an important thing to keep in mind is you can use this guy to you could party attack with 2 of them and kill off an 8k just on attack. That would be very strong. Being able to use him with Bismarck, you can ping down for 6k, and then you could tap Bismarck itself for 8k. So there are a lot of good small synergies that this guy can get, both specifically with Bismarck and kind of with the set. But duplicates of this card definitely get a lot better because you get 2 of these snipers out and then you literally start sniping stuff. But even by himself, he's very good. I think this card's easy in the great status. Very, very happy to play him. I would rather 5 of these in my deck than 5 sins every day of the week. All right, Chocomog. 1k for each character you control. In limited, you don't usually build up too crazy of a board. There are times where you kind of get into these stalemates. This happens a lot more in like games like Magic, rather than in Final Fantasy, because in Final Fantasy the attacker has the advantage. So the biggest guy is always just going to be attacking, unless there's a reason why he's holding back. Unless you're that deck, people are just going to be attacking, and usually your boards aren't going to be 5-6 forwards deep. There may be the time, but until your board is like 3 to 4 forwards deep, Chocomog by itself isn't really going to kill anything. So more or less, this card's only going to deal about 5k damage. Would be my guess. It's going to hit 5 to maybe 7k damage. Now keep in mind that is only for 2 CP, so that the cost of this and being able to use it in a lot of different tricky scenarios, or to combo this with a sniper on attack, very useful. But it's not going to get to like absurd numbers where it's just don't hold off on this card trying to like get it to 9 or 9k to one shot something. Just use it to combo, to trade in a forward or something, to get that really nasty forward out. Because of that, we'll give it a little bit better status than Ifrita. So go with 7. All right, Tiamat. So let's discard a card, Chaos. Just like with Maluris, you can only discard the Chaos cards. So, take that what you will. They are all common. If you're playing 2 colors that happen to have both Chaoses in them, that helps you a lot. This one only breaks up 5 CP or more. A lot of the really dangerous stuff in this set is 5 CP, but once again, that's not everything. So conditional break is a little worse than Maluris, but it is still removal. Being removal is still pretty great. So we'll still give it a 7, but it is specific removal rather than just dealing 8k, which is a lot less conditional. All right, and Typhon. This guy is pretty interesting because, like, unlike Volfador and Mom Bomb, who, like, if they don't turn into a forward, they're bad. This guy's great just at 3 CP, taking a forward and playing it 4 cards from the top of the deck. Then it also has the ability to turn into an 8k for 3 CP. This card's awesome. This card's very, very good. By being such a unconditional removal, now they can get the card back, and they will in 2 turns. but they then have to replay it. The tempo advantage that you gain from that though is so substantial. Typhon's just very strong. We'll just go ahead and give him a 9. All right, Naja Salahim. So this is when it deals damage. You're only going to 6 damage, so dealing damage is less likely than it is in a normal game. But other than just that, it's only a 5k. It can't get chosen by summons or abilities, that's fine, but it has no evasion. This card's a little weak for limited. And even if you do connect, pumping up the counters on one of your guys is honestly not that big of a deal most of the time. If you're increasing it by a substantial amount, your guy was probably already big enough already. Because if he was at 2, then going to 4 is good. But if he was already at 3, you could just wait one more turn, and he's probably good enough. So 2 CP 5k that does very little. I'm gonna give this like a below average. All right, Vanu, just like with all of the other backups, just like this. Only play them if you really need them. Keep in mind your deck count. Be careful. Like, missing on these cards is going to be really, really dangerous. When you're splashing these cards, just be really careful. All right. We'll move on from there. Fran, the first effect I don't think is relevant. I don't think they're going to be too often that you're going to have cast 3 or more cards. She does count herself, so that's 2 cards in front of her. Important thing to note. And then being a 5k that turns into a 7k, that's good. 3 damage is very, very approachable. But the extra draw card, don't like try to break your back or like play out your hand to try to get that. But 2 CP 7k is above curve. It's not huge, but it is above curve. So we'll give it a nice above average. So I'll be happy to play that. Mirren, card's just kind of fun to say. It activates your other ones. That's probably not something that you're really going to put a lot of stock in. The active ability, however, very, very good. Being able to kind of just pick something, specifically some of their most important backup or forwards. This card's very, very good. I would definitely give this a nice, easy 4. So yeah, I would definitely play at least 2 Mirrors if you have them. They're great. All right, and Yote, it just looks for your backup. At least have probably 3 targets if you're gonna play it. It can get you your Mirren, but being able to tutor a backup, very helpful. Being able to tutor a very cheap forward, also very good. But you have to have those pieces. All right, Lesaford. This guy's interesting because he's not large, but he can kill stuff on entry. Paying with 3 CP, I feel, is more often going to try to bait you into playing some subpar cards and subpar colors. If you're already pretty significantly in 3 colors, which I don't think this is the set for it. There's very little to no fixing. It's just not a great idea, this set. You can play this guy. I don't think it's going to be very consistent. You may be waiting around a while to try to draw that card. But if you do get the ability off, breaking any forward unconditionally is pretty nice. For that, we'll give him... We'll actually just give him a 5. No, we'll give him a 6. He does kill a forward. He's a pretty small body, and it's very conditional. Now, I stick to my guns. He's a 5. He's pretty meh. All right, Garuda, Lady of the Vortex. Enters the field, choose a forward, 9k or more, break it. Choose a forward, 9k or more, draw a card. This card's useful just because it's a primal. Like a lot of the other removal in Wind, it is conditional. However, this one's a primal, so that makes it better. And this card's a 9k, and that usually makes it better too. Potentially being able to draw a card when your opponent's starting to like gain back the steam is not a bad idea either. I think this card's pretty good because most of the cards you're really worried about in the set are going to be a little larger. But it unfortunately does not hit everything. Its restriction on what it hits is pretty rough. We'll give this a. I think I give it an 8 only because it's a primal. If it was not a primal, I think it drops down. But as mentioned previously, you just want to play your primals. And you want to play into whatever your best primals are. And kind of build your deck around that. Alright, Rosa. This card looks so beautiful. It needs a full art. I'm so sad it's not. It's a really cool card. Can be very good in standard. And I say all those things because it's bad. It's 3 CP 7k and most of the effects don't matter. It's pretty bad, all things considered. This is actually just going to get like a below average in limited. Keep in mind this is for limited, not for constructed, but I don't see many reasons why you should play this card. I'm happy if you open it. Hopefully you get a foil, but yeah, don't play it. Like, you can play it if you can, or if you need a card in that color. It is the filler of filler in your deck. All right, Dark Knight. We talked about efficient bodies, but this one also deals damage to you. Dealing damage to you is rough. You only get 6 points. It does help you get to your damage triggers, but dealing damage to you is rough. Now, if you're playing Earth Fire, this card gets a lot better because you can potentially combo it with Warrior Light, and this guy can turn into a 10, 11, 12k with Brave, right? That makes this guy insane. If this was just printed 12k Brave, yeah, everybody would play it. But it's not. You have to have that other card. You have to be at a high enough damage. And that means you're also in threat of dying. Because of all those reasons, it's going to get 6. Just because the body is still really good. Actually, yeah, the body is really good. That's a big body. Alright, we're going to give it a 7. The body is great. 9k for 3 CP is just hard to turn down. Alright, moving on to Wool. So this card's kind of a trap. There is one other Mobius forward in the set. It is Prish. A lot of people are gonna want to play this guy and hope that something's a Mobius. It is not. It is only Prish, and Prish does not combo with Wool. You cannot get, because Prish is on cast and this plays it, so it definitely tricks you. Other than that, he could be a 9k Brave that can't be broken. That's okay, but 9k for 6 CP is actually kind of underwhelming. Even with the Brave, and that's assuming you're at damage 3. Most of the time, this guy's going to kind of be a trap. Unfortunately, he is one of your larger forwards, but he is still going to be a trap. So I'm actually just going to give him a 5. Carbuncle. All your forwards gain 2k. Um, the last part of the effect is probably irrelevant. You're almost never going to be mono earth, but pumping all of your forwards, very, very good. We talked about why Chivalry was good for pumping for 3k. This is just as good for pumping 2k. It will probably stave off any kind of removal, but it also now lets all of your forwards attack. This card's really good. It can help an alpha swing. It can completely disincentivize an all-out offensive from your opponent. It can stop combo kills. It does a lot. 1 CP that's really easy to leave up. Also, you can just pitch a card from hand and not feel too bad for it. So, overall, I think Carbuncle's insane. I would play almost every single copy of Carbuncle I get. It's a rare. You probably won't get too many, but if you had 3 copies, I'd probably play all 3. Cabrena. So, unlike all of the other ones, this monster is all about just being a forward, and staying a forward and staying in play. Whereas like Mom Bomb can help you control the battlefield, or Volfor could help control their hand. Garuda or Typhon, tuck something away. This guy's just kind of bad. It's large. It's efficient. You have to have the earth backups. At the earth backups, it's fine. It's going to get an above average, but you're not always going to have that, and it doesn't really get too much else other than being a recurring forward. Now, towards the end of the game, being able to sacrifice your backups to put it back in play is great, except for the fact that that turns off the thing that makes it work. If you could just discard like 2 cards from hand to keep Calbrena, it would be much better. But the fact that it turns off the way that it turns on, by being able to come back, it actually really, really hurts Calbrena. Because of those reasons, I'm actually just going to give it a 6, because you're usually just going to play it. It may not even come online. If it does go online, then once it dies, you're probably not getting it back online. If you're really, really earth heavy, this card's great. He's an easy include. He's above average. But if you're not heavy earth, he's very weak. All right, Titan. Everybody kind of probably assumes this guy's just nuts. He is nuts. He kills everything that's smaller than him. Can potentially deal them a point of damage. The other thing, he's a primal. Build your decks around your primals. Like, this guy is an absolute monster. I don't know if he's quite as good as Shiva. I think he's almost as good as Susanoo in limited. But he's like 9.8. I think I'm just gonna give him a 10. If I had to rank these primals though, Susanoo and Shiva are on another scale than Titan. But Titan's still SS tier, right? Like you really want him. He's insane. So definitely give Titan a big nod, and we'll keep going. Chi-Chu. So this pumps your guy, so it's the reverse of the Cobalt Droid. Obviously, it's a little less flexible than the Cobalt Droid, but it can also save your guys, right? So rather than just killing something off, this one, you're going to be less pressed to, like, play it out very early. So you can feel, because just pumping for 2k is fine, whereas just pinging for 2k is bad most of the time. You want to ping for 8k if given the option. Pumping for 8k is usually redundant. So being able to only pump for 2k is actually helpful enough. So this card actually gets a pretty big nod. You can kind of fit it into your strat wherever. Between this and Carbuncle, be really scared of Earth players just like pumping out of whatever damage you're throwing at them. So I think I'll give this a 7. It's not quite as good as Carbuncle, but it definitely holds a lot of weight in limited. So don't overlook this card. Ketone, or Chitone, or Ketone. Enters the field, choose one character, can't attack or block. Unfortunately, you can only get this the turn it comes in, so this kind of works just like Kefka did. Um, Except I think the S ability here is more relevant than Kefka's active ability was. Um, Being able to prevent something from attacking or blocking, even on EX, is pretty helpful, but most of the time this is just going to be a 2 CP backup, not going to do too much else. I would give this a slight edge over like where I put Kefka, so I'd put it in the average spot, but at least uh, S copies can get used rather than just being completely dead weight. But all right, moving on. Cloud, anime figure number one. This dude looks sweet, but also he's pretty good. So being able to control your opponent's board with the first effect by forcing them to block is insane. Cloud is going to be an 8 to 10k plenty of times. There are some other category 7 cards to be able to protect him. This guy's just an absolute monster. The first effect, all of the first text alone would put this guy in bomb territory. The final thing to be able to protect him, you can use that ability in response to somebody trying to kill him with anything. So they try Ifrita him, you discard a category 7 card. All of a sudden, that no longer does anything. This card's great. Absolutely great. So, just like Titan, this guy will control a board. He's not going to be the board wipe, but he will very much be the reason you win. Also, unlike Titan, he's not a primal, so big downside there. Big upside is he's category 7, so you get your synergy with him, Tifa, and Barret. Alrighty. Kobold. He's the Earth Primal one. They're all pretty good. He's just like Ixali, pretty weak by comparison to the other primal support backups. Being able to pump is nice, but it's not as good as dealing damage or being able to dull something. So both of those are a little bit more powerful. But Kobold's fine. If you have primals and you're in Earth, you're going to play it. Alright, and Shantoto. It can make Wind CP. It can get you a Wind or Earth. It's pretty whatever. If you're playing both colors, it's fine. This is your really only color fixing in this set, which is the rough part of it. So you're really only looking in Earth and Wind too much for multicolor. So this would be a good place where you could, if you're playing some Earth, you can splash in some Wind, and then help fill in that third color. But more or less, I don't think you're going to want 3 colors most of the time. So overall, I think this card's pretty average to weak. The fact that you can effectively make it a 1 CP kind of negates the cost as well. But if you do miss and your deck's not built too specifically, if you're in an Earth Wind deck, this card's great. If you're in a deck that's trying to splash some Earth and Wind, Earth or Wind, it could be a lot weaker. But overall, in the right deck, it'll be a pretty good card. So I'll give it a 4. No, I'll give it a 3. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable giving it that good of a... Alright, Dark Elf. If it's dealt 9k or more, it becomes 0. This card's interesting. I've not... It's hard to evaluate in a limited format. I got to imagine this card's pretty good. 2 separate damage packets of like 7k and 7k, you'll still kill it. But if I'm reading it correctly, but a single damage of 9k and it just gets to block forever. So that's pretty useful. It's a strangely useful ability. It doesn't impact the board too terribly much. It is only just one forward, but it definitely is pretty unique in what it can do. It may be much better than I'm thinking, but I will still give it an above average. All right, Noctis. For Noctis, you get to get a 15 forward from your break zone. I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me double check. I don't think they're 15s. I think this guy was a trap. Yeah. Oh, no, you got Arden and Ravis. Okay. Arden and Ravis. But that's not too much. The only one in color is Arden. And yeah, you're not really crazy about using this ability on Arden. He's weak. He's very, very weak. I'm actually just gonna give him like a 1. He's just gonna be like pretty avoidable unless you have multiple copies of Arden for your deck. You can splash the Ravis. I don't think we haven't gotten to them, but I don't think either of them are that insane. Not worth splashing. I don't think this card's very good. You're gonna pay 4 CP. It's gonna be a very bad to dead backup. All right, Begammon. Okay, right. So this chooses one of your opponent's forwards. Usually, is what you want to do. However, oh no, it can only choose opponent's forward. Yeah. So if you're only choosing opponent's forward, it can help you kill off something that's attacking, that's being annoying, but that also requires you to have a forward that is big enough to kill it. Earth has quite a few big guys, but overall, I don't think this card's particularly powerful. Usually, once again, you want to play your backups pretty early. I think this guy's just gonna sit at. Actually, he's. I'll give him an average. I'll give him a 3. If you can use this and kill off something, great. Most of the time, he's just gonna be CP though. 2 CP, perfectly fine. All right, Paladin. This is Earth's Mill 2. Once again, these cards are pretty bad. Be really careful with them. If you miss, only play them if you're very deep in one of those colors. If you miss with it, it's absolutely terrible. Be conscious of your deck size. Yada. All right, Hojo. Kind of like red. This is a combo card. However, he is not going to be as like universally good, or actually other way around. He is going to be more universally good, but he is also more expensive. So you're looking at 4 CP backup, but there are a lot of situations where you can pitch a 4 CP forward and get a 3 CP forward. However, you're not really gonna want to do that. Like if you had counters or something on your guy, great. There aren't too many forwards in this set that's going to cost more, get reduced, and then you're going to play like there's just not many options here. Overall, this guy's just gonna be pretty bad. You can maybe trade out like something that is just unplayable that you're playing for some reason, for something that is playable. Speaking of, one of the cards that is actually coming up can combo with him pretty well. But other than that, most of the time, this card's going to be pretty bad. He's kind of going to be a trap. Alright, Moraga Fens. Oh, there we go. Yeah, he's conditional. Most of the time, he's just going to be 3 CP 7k. If you can get something back and you can trade something in and he turns into a 1 CP 7k, that's great. I would say most of the time he's just going to be straight average though. There are enough times where you're just going to play him for 3 CP 7k. That's not going to be too exciting. And the times when he does draw you something back, unless it's just like the best forward, it's not going to make that big of a difference either. Alright, Monk. This card's bad. This card's a big trap. It has to choose a target. So when it enters, it or another monk has to choose something your opponent controls. It is a standard unit. If you're playing Earth Fire and you get Warrior of Light, this card might be pretty good. If you use it with some pumps, it can be pretty good. Most of the time, this card's going to be pretty bad. I'm just going to give it a below average. If you combo it with the other cards that I mentioned, it gets a little bit better, but most of the time, this card's going to be pretty underwhelming. Montleonis, this is the guy who I was mentioning with Hojo. You can trade him out, but he gets reduced for every Earth character you control. You have to have like pretty substantial amounts of Earth for this guy to get pretty good. The best target for him is Wool, and Wool's pretty bad because he is a 6 CP Earth forward. You unfortunately can't pull out Titan, and most of the other Earth forwards are pretty weak, other than Cloud, obviously. If you have Cloud, play this guy. Otherwise, I don't know if I want to play this guy. He's pretty mediocre. I'll be interested to see how he works in Standard when you pay like nothing for him. But he's just not going to be too terribly impactful. So I'm going to put him on the below average scale. Actually, yeah. No, I'm actually going to go ahead and put him on the bad scale. There's enough times where, no, we'll make up my mind. There will be a few times where you do use him, you pull out a Dark Elf. It saves you from losing the game. But you're probably going to still pay, 6, 7 CP to be able to pull out forwards. And that's going to really hurt. All right. And now we have a Lich. This one just gets you, just like the other Chaos cards, once again, they're best when paired with another color that is also a Chaos color. Choose one card in your break zone, add it to hand. Cool thing, you can get summons, you can get anything. That being said, this is the weakest of all of them so far, by a pretty substantial margin. Just picking something back is not too insane. I'll give it a 6, but overall, it's it's not too terribly crazy. So an important thing to note here is I'll kind of go over everything again when we get closer to the end, but Earth is pretty weak overall, but it does have a few standout cards. Titan and Cloud are insane. Chichu, Carbuncle, pretty useful. Dark Knight is useful, but most of the other forwards you're looking at are pretty weak in the set, and that's pretty concerning, especially considering Earth is the lightest on forwards, or may not forwards, but in non-backup cards, right? So Earth has the most backups, but it has the lightest in everything else. So that is going to affect what you see in your Earth pools. So I do imagine Earth being a lot weaker. Unless you get Titan or Cloud, I would be pretty worried about going into Earth. Okay, Ovjang. There's a field, choose one forward, costs 3 or less in your break zone, add to hand. Yeah, he's fine. He's effectively going to be a 1 CP backup. Yeah, as long as you have enough forwards that are small in your deck, this guy's going to be pretty good. He's just a nice, consistent, steady backup. Isn't going to offer you a lot of tutor. He's only going to pick back up small stuff late game, but still something to count. Trapdoor. Put into the field of the break zone, choose a forward, break it. This kind of works just like Mom Bomb. It's pretty much the exact same thing, except you get to pick what you kill, which I like a little bit more, but not that much more. I'll give it a 7. It's about the same spot as Mom Bomb. Afmao. I think this card's kind of a trap. I don't think it's ever really going to do much. If you get with Ovjang and you pay 1, cool, you paid 1 for a 3 CP backup, or a 3 CP forward. It's not going to break the game, and I feel like you had to work pretty hard for that. Overall, it's going to be a vanilla card. I'm going to give it a 4. It's pretty weak here. All right, X Death. This card's awesome. First off, art wise, character wise. If you get duplicates, the S ability is phenomenal, but the first ability, just unconditionally breaking something, even though it is very expensive, very, very expensive, it also brings you out a forward. It does something. This card's great. I think this card's just an absolute all-star unlimited, so I'd play as many copies as I get. Especially considering you have the S. Alright, Puppet Master. This guy was made fun of a lot. And I feel bad for him. So we're going to give him a good rating. Not just because I feel bad for him, but in Limited, this effect's great. Even though it's 2 for 1, you can trade out like 2 CP forwards for their best thing, and now it never gets to attack. You can do this when they go to attack. And then that guy, then you get a whole round of attacks in. Like, that changes a whole massive amount of tempo. This dude's only 2 CP, and you can have multiples of him out. He's actually quite powerful in Limited. So I'm definitely going to give this guy a nice 7. Like, this is... 7s are the cards you want in your deck, for sure. And I would want quite a few copies of this guy. Alright, Nath. Same thing with all the other ones, you know. I'm not even gonna repeat it. They're bad. Be careful. But maybe play them if you need them. Fachan. So this one only hits active forwards, so this one's actually arguably worse than the ice one, because once again it went back up to 2 CP, and it's just strictly worse than the fire one. But you can just kind of play them out early, use it to kill one of their bigger forwards, something that could be road blocking you. There is a lot of benefits here, but it just being strictly worse than Cobalt Droid Yang. I mean, I know you're in Lightning, you don't have as much removal. You do have another card that's actually next that can combo with it, but overall, we'll give it a 6. Happy to play it, but not like over the moon. Shuzelt. This is that card that I just mentioned. Can help combo with things. It deals damage and can help you kind of finish out, like, killing off something. It is only lightning characters, and he's a lot worse than Camlanot, but he's a common. So important thing to remember is you can get that S ability pretty easily, and then you're only looking at 4 CP, play a backup, and you can kill something. He's very useful if you are fairly heavy into lightning, but he's not going to win games all by himself for you. I do think he might be a little bit above average. Most of the time, he's probably just going to be average, though. So I'm going to give him a 5. He is a nice enabler, though. Alright. Sylph, this is your primal support. It prevents the next 2k damage. This is worse than all of the others by a lot. It's playable. It's very playable. It's worse. You're only... once again, I think you should, especially in your pre-release, only be playing around your primals. So if you're playing Lightning, you should have a primal in Lightning, probably. Assuming you do, this card's definitely an include. But without it, the card gets very bad. Your primal also won't always be out. So for those reasons, it's only going to get a 2. All right, and Heidegger. This card's like the opposite of that last card, where it's insane. You get to kill something. You pay 6 CP, but you get to kill something. It also breaks itself. It doesn't mill your deck too much because they go to the bottom of your deck. So it this card's insane. This card's everything I want in a backup. Like, holy cow. Yeah, killing a forward, drawing me another forward, having the flexibility of being 2 CP or 6 CP. A very, very good card. Ravana. All right. Legend Primal. They're good. They're always good. Um, this one's one of the more conditional ones. Um, it's weird. I mean, all of its text is right there. Obviously, it's strong, but you kind of have to have something to help combo with it. Uh, there's not a ton of just hard instant speed removal, so you're not going to get the benefits of attack, kill something with a summon, untap, attack. There are some, like you can use your monsters, you can use Fachan, Koboldroid, Ifrita, but more or less, most of the stuff is going to happen, main phase or during combat. So obviously you attack with Ravana first, and then you can force other blocks with your other guys. Um, it can work. Another thing to keep in mind is this is another reason why I like Heidegger so much is he's a backup that breaks himself. This triggers off of any character going to the break zone. So Heidegger breaking himself would untap Ravana. So depending on how many things you can get, you can go absolutely ham with this card. It does not have haste. It kind of feels like it should, especially when Susanoo does, but card's still very good. It's a bomb. It's actually a bomb plus. We'll give it that status, but all right. Nedging. Choose one forward, cost 3 or less, it gains 1,000. There aren't too many pumps in the set. Pumps are good. It's a backup. It's 2 CP. It's flexible. It's good. So we'll just give it a nice average. Ewan. Choose a damage forward, break it. This is great, and this works so well with Shuzelt. However, an important thing to take note of, if you have Shuzelt out and you play Ewan, it doesn't work. Because Shuzelt has to actually trigger and deal the damage, so you can choose the forward as is being after it's damaged. So you will need to play like Shuzelt, or have Shuzelt out, play a backup, then play Ewan, and then you can get that combo. But still a very good card. It's very small. It doesn't have haste. It doesn't have evasion. It's gonna kind of just be there. It's a body. Being able to be removal is definitely above average. Being 1 CP is pretty interesting. But overall, he's just gonna be above average because he's probably gonna kill something, but you most of the time will have to work a little bit to get that kill. If you can get an easy kill off of it, actually, I'm gonna give it a 7. If you can get an easy kill off of it, it's definitely pretty worth it. All right, Rama. This guy's strange. He is just really good in constructed, and that is not limited. Considering there's only one lightning summon in the set, then he's not really going to have the first ability almost always. If you have him and the summon, it's going to be great because you can kill off 2 forwards. Most of the time, you're just not going to see much value from him. He's just going to be a 5 CP 9k, and that's going to be about it. If you get him, if you get the combo, great. he still probably won't have haste. But if you do have him 2 copies of the summon, you should definitely play him. But most of the time, he's just going to be a standard 9k. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll give him, honestly, just an average, because he's not going to be as insane as a lot of people probably think he is. He's pretty good for constructed, but I don't see him being too insane for limited. And here's Rama, the summon that I just mentioned. If you have this with the previous Rama, it's very, very, very good. If you don't, it's pretty bad. It's just gonna hit for 1k. You're spending 2 CP. It's not gonna hit for enough, even though it's EX. I think this card probably, unfortunately, is going to be in like the below average territory, because you're not going to want it in your deck too often unless you have the forward Rama, and then you're playing a pretty mediocre card to be able to play a really good combo. All right, Dragoon. This guy's great. This guy is pretty interesting. He gets better with the more forwards you have, and also he's a standard unit, gets better with Warrior Light. Other than playing Fire Lightning, I think this guy's still pretty playable. If you happen to get multiple of these Dragoons, you can start getting to the point where you can combo kill very easily. I do think Fire Lightning is a good pairing, just because of all of the like chip damage here, chip damage there. It does make all of each one better. If you do happen to get 2 of these guys out, though, reduced by 6k, that's gonna be pretty substantial. I do wish it was a 9k body. At 8k body for 5 CP, it's a little overcosted, but I mean, I'll take it as is. I'll give it above average. All right, Luso. Cool that he is Final Fantasy Tactics and A2, but so he's gonna look and get A2 characters. There are not too many A2 characters. You've got Ewan and Alua, but I don't think there are too many other ones. So most of the time, this guy's just gonna be a 2-drop 3k. And you're almost never gonna get the S ability. This guy's just gonna be a pretty close to hard pass for me. There's just too many times where he's gonna miss. He's gonna do nothing. He's just gonna be a hard. Don't play him. Don't put him in your deck. Ravis. Right. I think I looked at this before. I don't think there were any other job captains other than Ravis. There might have been. I don't think this card is very good. It can just reduce by 5k and then be a 9k. Actually, that's actually a little better than I thought. Never mind. So I think this card actually fits in about the same spot as the Dragoon. Where it's going to reduce something. It is a 9k. It is a specific name, but I don't think the first ability plays out. Unless, obviously you lose your first Ravis and then you play your second Ravis. But that would be the only situation. I think it'll get the same reward as Dragoon, because it's just it's not doing too much. It's potentially going to kill something, but it's not like winning the game, even though it's reducing somebody. All right, Roche, haste and a free play as long as he is the only guy you play. He's pretty good. I think this guy's great. All gas, no brakes. I think you'll be happy to play this guy just by being a haster and then going to a 7k. Honestly, this guy might just be. If I didn't label 8 as bomb, I would almost just put this guy as an 8. But this guy's very good. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna give him an 8. I don't care. He's very good. All right. Now I'm actually going to shift over things so that we can move on to the next half of the board. Last color and then everything extra. So we got Blue Mage here. If you control a monster, it gets plus 1,000. There's one monster in each color. So we have Tonberries in this one. I actually don't remember how good Tonberries was, but it does draw back a card. So you're effectively looking at 2 CP, 7k, if if you have monsters in your deck. Those monsters are heroes. You won't always see them. It makes this card a little bit worse. Overall, I think I'm going to give this card a 6. Like, when you have a lot of monsters, this card's going to be very good. When you don't, it's going to be pretty bad. All right. Snake Lady, Ananta. Same thing as all of the other ones. You know, it's going to mill you. It's going to do all that stuff. Could be quite bad. Be careful playing these cards. Ultimecia. Oh. Let me actually move that down. Boop. There we go. All right, Ultimecia. I like this effect, but it's not particularly exceptional. It's a one-time use on your backup, but it can steal, one of their better things. The cost restriction is very tight. Like the fact that you can't choose a greater than or less than or anything like that. It has to be exact. That's very bad. So that definitely hurts this card a lot. You are effectively killing their forward by trading yours for theirs. So there will be good times to use this, but there are a lot of times where it's going to be bad. You can't play it early, and also, you know, it's very conditional on the CP cost. So for those reasons, I'll give it a 3. I think. Nah, I'm gonna give it a 2. No, it does kill a forward. Well, we'll give it a 3. All right, 3 it is. Ico. Search for a summon, put it in your break zone. There's not many reasons why you'd want to use that. You'd probably just be happier waiting and drawing your summon, because your summons are most of the time pretty good. So be careful. You don't have to discard stuff, so you may not want to. The second effect is very good though, picking back up your summons, because they are good. The fact that it gives you the option on both, this card's good. Card's very good. Specific names, so you can't play too many, but I play it. Alright, and then we have Corsair. Alright, and Octomammoth. I actually forgot. So here is our monster. I forgot this was the monster. So you got 3 or more water backups. Choose 2 forwards opponents control, return them to their hand. It's actually pretty great. Being able to get a tempo advantage by just bouncing, let's say 2 4-drops that don't have a play-and-play effect in limited, or even a 5-drop, that could substantially hurt your opponent. Even though they don't have to redraw them or they're not gone for good, that does slow them down a lot. Obviously, if you're playing water heavy enough, then you are going to be able to turn him into a forward, and then he's pretty good. I don't think you want to play too many of these monsters, with the exception of Typhon, if you cannot turn them into forwards. So this one's an exception. You can maybe play him, but I wouldn't be ecstatic to play him if you're not going to turn him into a forward. But when you turn him into a forward, he becomes a very good card. And I'm going to judge them all based on turning themselves into forwards. So I'm actually going to give him an 8 I think that's a pretty strong effect to be able to bounce 2 things for 3 CP and then also be a forward. All right, Ultros. Ultros put into the field, break zone. Put the top 5 in your break zone, and then pick another Ultros and then put it into play. He's a 2 CP 5K. You don't want to mill your deck 5 deep. You don't want to fill it with a ton of Ultroses. This card's just a trap. Don't play it. It's not gonna do a lot for you. You're gonna accidentally end up losing the game. This is definitely probably a bad situation. Yeah. All right, moving on. Leviathan, Lord of the Whirl. This dude's very cool. He is a 9 CP. Is the biggest problem. In limited, you don't always have enough time to like plan out when you're gonna draw stuff. Like you can't bank around your Leviathan because it's probably a one of in your deck. So being 9 CP, you can't just plan on always having enough cards in hand to play it the turn you draw it. That being said, if you get it, it's great. You're probably gonna win the game. You play it and you get it off. It's gonna be insane. But it is a 9 CP. It's a 9K. It's a primal. For all the reasons mentioned, it's definitely weaker than Titan. It's weaker than Shiva. It's weaker than Susanoo, mostly due to its cost. If this was a 7 CP, a 6 CP, it would be a wild difference. But where it's at, it probably only gets Bomb, maybe even Bomb. No, I'll give it Bomb Plus. It still is going to win you games, but being 9 CP can cost you a lot. All right, Kina, discard a monster, draw a card. Most of the time, you're not going to want to discard your monsters, and then remove 3 monsters, and it does a thing. If you somehow have enough monsters to make this guy work, it's okay. The active ability is quite good, but I don't see enough worlds where you're going to have 3 monsters in your break zone and be happy about it. If you're only playing monsters that are bad, then you're going to pitch them, they'll go to your break zone. But that's the only way it's really going to happen, and then you're filling your deck with bad cards. So, overall, I'm going to give this probably a 5, maybe even a 5. Alright, Kraken. Discard a Chaos, draw 2 cards. So, this one's fine. It kind of nets neutral, right? You're a 6. You're essentially going to be playing a 2 CP 8K, or you're playing a 4 CP 8K. So, he's fine. He's a lot weaker than some of the other ones, specifically like Malyrus. I think he is better than Lich was, but not by much. I think he actually just still gets a 6. I think Malyrus and Tiamat are much more powerful. Obviously, once again, you need to be playing, if you're going to play any of them, you need to play in a color that has 2 of them, probably. So, like a Earth-Water combination, something like that. Alright, Corsair. Enters the field, draw a card, discard a card. If it's multi-element, draw a card, then discard a card. He's fine. He's filter. He's a 2 CP backup. He has a slightly positive effect. He's multiplay. Stack your deck with him, he's fine. He's nothing exciting. Golbez. At the beginning of your attack phase, during each of your turns, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a forward, costs 3 or less, you may play it onto the field. Put 4 characters into the break zone, choose 1 forward, you gain control of it. This card's very interesting and, I don't know, a little difficult to analyze. Costs 3 or less. I mean, the front half is only upside, and then the other half is is fantastic, but at a pretty substantial cost. Losing 4 characters is quite substantial. But by being a 5 CP 9K and being able to steal the best thing on your opponent's board, I think it gets this guy pretty easy bomb status. Now, whether it was better than that, it might be. But I think losing 4 characters is a substantial enough loss, and then you'd have to build the rest of your deck around 3 CP forwards to be able to get the maximum value out of that front half, which is fine. I don't think you want to do that. I think you just want to play this card, and if you get lucky and you hit 1 or 2, great. If you don't, that's fine. Sahagin was the primal support here. It draws cards through your deck. I think this is hands down the weakest out of all of them. I think just with Sylph, it's going to get a 2. Obviously, play your primals, build around your primals, but this support for your primal is not what you're really looking for in Limited. It can help you draw cards, but you're kind of... Yeah, all you're doing is filtering, and I don't know, if it was card positive, this card would be insane, but it's not. Alright, Jekt. I actually haven't read this guy. A lot of the wire cards I kind of glanced over. 4 more forwards. Okay. Yeah, this card's great. Holy cow. Yeah, he punches really hard. Wow, just like Golbez, this card's very good. Just kind of 5 CP, generic, good guy with a good ability. If you happen to get the S ability, great. It's nice protection. Honestly, I probably wouldn't even use the S ability. I'd probably try to get the first ability twice. But if you can get the 3 or more forwards we're attacking this turn, actually I think he may drop to a 7. He's not quite as good as Golbez, but he's still very good. All right, Steiner. He's fine. That restriction's rough. And they have to be forwards. They can't be like your monsters. So be very careful. Playing this guy, I would not play too terribly many of him. I would be very worried. He's guy in upside, but he's got pretty big downside. So we'll give him a 5. All right, Tonberry. Here's the other monster. His wire gets 2 because they're special. But this one's just a monster. At the end of your turns, place 1 monster counter on Tonberry. Put Tonberry into the break zone. Look at the number of cards. Yeah, I don't think this card's... I could be wrong. This card's actually interesting card filter. So it can help you out early game, but or even late game. You just play it off early, and then you can eventually get there. Even though this doesn't impact the board, it's so card neutral. Since it's only 1 CP, you can probably find a spot to play it. It'll always draw you a card back. I think this card's pretty good. I think I'll give it above average. I probably be careful about stacking your deck with too many of them, though. All right, Lakshmi. This card's great. Card draws cards. Who doesn't like drawing cards? In Limited, it's very good. Even though it's undercosted, drawing a card every turn is going to be very quickly going to roll you ahead of your opponents. So we'll go ahead, give her a nice 8. Also, she is your other primal in water. Once again, play around your primals. Larsa. Enters the field, chooses a card. You get to swap something. If you have enough EX burst, it gets bigger. I don't think this card's very good. For Limited, it's just going to be a 2 CP 5k. Don't get trapped into wanting to play it because it's your legend. It's not very good. All right, Leviathan. Took a second to load, but there it goes. select 2 of the following abilities, and its EX, and it's a big ol' summon. Uh, you get to bounce something, you can break a light or dark, or put it on top of their deck, and then you get to choose a water forward. So you're effectively, most of the time, going to play this as a 4 CP where it got back the best water forward, and then bounce something. I don't think it's too terribly insane. I think it's helpful. You know, you get a little bit of recursion, you get to bounce something, but most of the time it's not really going to kind of break the bank or anything. It's a perfectly fine card. So we'll actually skip this a 5. All right, and lose off is our last water card. Choose forward, return it. Then your opponent has to sacrifice something. It's a back attack. It's a forward. This is very good. You can combo this with a lot of stuff. Like you could combo this with like Roche and get him out for free. You can combo this with Emperor and draw a card every time, and he's a 0 CP. There are plenty of 2 CP forwards. This card's very, very good. It's not quite a bomb, but it does have back attacking as removal and saves your guy and also kills a guy. I'm actually just gonna give it a 5. This is a very, very good backup. All right, moving into the light and dark section. Shinryu, not everything is 3, 6, or 9, obviously, to deal 10k. So you're not going to kill the whole board when you come out. Being able to play this card, obviously, you can set up where it is effective for you and not effective for your opponent. The continual effect is amazing. If it goes off for a single turn, you've pretty much already won the game. Obviously, this card's just an absolute bomb in Limited. It doesn't quite win the game like some of the 10s do, I think. And because it doesn't have protection like Cloud does, I would say it's actually it probably deserves just an actual 10. This card's very good. All right, Mushari. You can remove 3 summons that you have. Once again, there aren't a ton of summons. If you have enough summons, this card can get pretty good. More than likely, you're just looking at playing this card once, and getting its effect once. So I would say it's about the same power level as Emperor is, as a 2 CP forward that effectively costs nothing because it's one of your best options is draw a card or bounce a forward. I think it's fine. It'll be a 7. All right. Omega, God, this guy has just a mile of text, but he is good. He is very, very good. He gets to deal your opponent damage and is a 10k for 5. So essentially every other turn you get to deal them a point of damage. And he also has a little bit of protection if he has the counter on him and then they try to kill him or do anything to him, it removes it and then he can't die. So he just has a lot of uses. He's not as good as Shinryu, but he is large and very good. So he'll get 9 for sure. All right, and Stern. So this makes everything cheaper. He's a 9k for 4. Guy's very, very good. And then you can also get his active ability. His active ability is very, very strong. He's actually just going to get a 9 from me as well. Being able to kill off a forward, break monsters, and specifically the plus 4,000 to your whole field is absolutely insane. Alrighty. Now we're moving over to the multicolor. Arden, he's fine. 2 CP, 7k. I'm pretty happy about that. Obviously, he's multicolor. This is going to be the big downside of all the multicolor cards is you need to be in both colors. If you are in both colors, most of these cards are going to be pretty good, though. So if you're in those colors, definitely looking for either of the abilities. They're both very, very strong. So I'll give this guy a nice solid 7. Actually, in limited, I think this guy gets an 8. Pumping your whole field and giving him first strike is going to be an absolute game changer. All right, Tifa. Unfortunately, this card, despite what I just said, is actually pretty weak. You're unlikely to tutor your Cloud. If you have Cloud and you have this card, tutor it. Play this card and tutor your Cloud. Great. You're never getting the damage 6, and it's not really doing much else. It's giving maybe 1,000 power. Actually, I guess the 1,000 power, bring it back up a little. But it's just average. Barrett, the first ability is not that big. The second ability is not that big. He is a 4 CP 9k. That's pretty big. 4 CP 9k is alone probably worthwhile. Just want to play him as long as you're in the colors. Once again, these cards aren't probably the cards you want to play or to build your deck around. They're more, if you're in the colors, they are that good. Alcid, he gets stuff when you do put somebody in play, Ice or Lightning. If you're in both these colors, this card's just an absolute house. He's going to do a lot for you. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. He's going to help you attack. He's going to help you put dudes out for free. Sephiroth, he's not quite as good. Choose a dull forward, freeze it. That's and discard card. That's a very strong tempo play. But he's obviously not quite as good as Alcid. And also just being small is a little bit of a downside. Zero Miss. This card's going to win you games. If it sits out a single turn, it's just going to pretty much win you the game most of the time. Because it keeps one thing locked down. It has haste. It dulls all of their forwards. And technically, if you have haste when you play it, you can lock down 2 things. This card's a solid play. This card might be something that you could build around if you got like this guy, and especially if you got this guy and Alcid. I'd be looking at Ice Lightning. Vaughn, there aren't a ton of Sky Pirates. This guy is a trap. Unfortunately, you're paying 6 CP for 8k, and he's a pretty bad card. So we're gonna give him an appropriate score. Aerith, 2 CP, 7k, obviously above. You can bounce one of your own forwards, or you can protect them. Neither ability is insane. Bouncing a forward is sometimes good. There aren't a ton of scenarios where it's like super relevant in this set, but there are a few. Overall, I would just, this card's just maybe average, above average. I guess above average just from the stats alone. All right, Zidane can't be blocked. He's gonna win games. He bounces people. If they don't answer him, he's just gonna kind of win the game by himself. So go Zidane. We'll give him a nice. Yeah, we'll give him a. He is still pretty easy to kill. Yeah, we'll just give him a 7. Alrighty, and Prish. As mentioned before, this card is a non-bow with wool, but if you pay for the ability and you're in Earth and Wind, it's very good. Just being a potential 10k Brave, huge. Absolute massive stats. If you're in the right colors, this card's an 8. Gesho, he's going to be able to pick the best card out of their hand. He's 8k 5 CP, so you're really thinking more 3 CP 8k, so he's above average stats. And then the knowledge plus the fact that he removes it plus the fact that he gets to pick, this card's actually very good. I think this guy will get a nice 7. He's definitely not a bomb. He's not gonna win the game by himself, but he helps. All right, Cloud of Darkness. This card's really hard to trigger. For the discount, for either. So most of the time, you're just gonna play this for 4 CP, dull, freeze one character. 4 CP, dull, freeze one character probably gets a 6 from me. It's just slightly above average. Um, it it seems like it's so easy to trigger those abilities, but it's really not in this set. So important things. If you have Lakshmi, it doesn't work because she draws at the end of the turn. Shoot, who else can draw you a card? Like no one. That's the problem. You can combo it with the Corsair. I guess that's about it. All right, and finally, if you happen to get lucky and see some full art legend cards from the legacies, we'll just go over them real quick. So you got Emperor. There are a few good number of action abilities that this guy can stop, but it's not that important. And overall, he's 4 CP 5 or 8K. So really, he's really just gonna be looking below average. Conversely, you have Wool, who can help ping, he can help brave, he can help pump, and he can help save you from EX burst. We all know this card. This card's great. In limited, he's pretty substantial. Being able to brave 2K something to break the stalemate is one of the most important things that you can do. He's definitely going to get bomb status. And Astinian, this guy can just win games by himself. He can't get blocked, essentially. And he attacks twice. If you have 5 backups, he gets haste. He's very, very good. I'll actually give him a 9. And that'll help round out everything. All right. So this is my overall final opinion on everything in the set. One of the big things to note is, don't just look at these average scores down here. Important thing, I'll just kind of go through each color real quick. Fire is pretty consistent across the board. Most of the stuff is pretty playable. Some of the stuff may be like deceptively bad, Garland especially. But most of Fire is pretty good. Their backups are a little weak, except for Geomancer and the Primal support. For Ice, you've got quite a few above average picks over here as well, with like Camlanot and Gilgamesh. Of course, both of those are heroes and legends. What you really want to look for are some of the like commons and rares. So you got Time Mage and Sarah are both very good. Backups wise, I think they're very strong because you get the Moogle, you get Luge, you get Corneo, you get the Bard. So overall, Ice looking pretty good. Wind, I think Wind is a little weaker than some of the others. I think most of their forwards are pretty soft. They're either not big enough or they don't do enough by themselves. I think Typhon is one of the best monsters. However, having Rosa, having Abquaba, I don't think this is going to be very powerful in comparison to a lot of the other other colors. So like let's see. And then you have Earth. Earth is pretty similar to Wind, except it's way more so about, did you open Titan or Cloud? If you don't open Titan or Cloud, I don't think you want to play Earth. I don't think there's not even like an Earth backup or multicolor that you really want to play. So I would be wary of playing Earth without Titan or Cloud. For Lightning, you can definitely. I think the average score down here is a little deceptive. Luso is really bad, but he is a hero. You're not going to see him too often. But honestly, just don't play him. For most of the other stuff, you do have a lot of weak stuff. You don't have like a ton of power. Like one of your primals, I think, is it's probably one of the weakest primals. And I think that's really important to highlight is, having a weak primal. I think most of the time you want to play around them. So I do think overall lightning is pretty weak this set as well. And then you have water. I think water was deceptively good with Golbez and Jekt, just being large bodies. Leviathan can be a little tricky to play. And then Lakshmi, I think, is a very good of the rare primals. So that's an important thing to note. But other than that, I think water is just a little bit above average. They do have Luzov as a good backup, and obviously something I forgot about Lightning is they have two phenomenal backups. But overall, I would probably not immediately aim for Lightning. So if I had to say like my personal final ranking, I think we're definitely going to put Fire or Ice are pretty close. So I'm actually just gonna put Fire Ice at the top, and then we will move on to Water, and then Wind, and then I think Lightning, and then I think Earth. And I think these are actually, I think Lightning and Earth may be at the exact same spot, kind of like Fire and Ice are. This would be my generic ranking as to like what color is the best color and what you want to go into and yada yada yada. But hopefully that helps people with any of their pre-release questions or what cards they're looking at and how things kind of synergize together. Always feel free to just like shoot me a message if you ever have any questions or anything, and hopefully everybody pulls really good cards at their pre-release and has a lot of fun.